As we're walking down Sheaf Street, this is a really good example of the way that the name of Daventry is slightly curious. Daintry is a local pronunciation. It's sort of lost that pronunciation, and in fact there is another area called Daintry specifically, but here we've got it spelt very nicely, Daintry. Now where does Daintry come from? There's quite an extraordinary tradition that Daventry is founded on a Danish settlement in England. But it is more likely that Daventry comes from an Anglo-Saxon family called Dentry, or maybe Daffer. There's an old abbey and a school, now a library, and in there you will find a Shakespeare reference to Daventry, the red-nosed innkeeper of Daventry, from Henry IV, Part 1, Act 4, Scene 2. But Daventry is better known for its link to the BBC, and, of course, for the development of radar in 1935. Early radio had a very limited range, though it was significantly more popular than people expected. So the BBC licence, which was set up through the post office costing 10 shillings, within a very short time, by 1926, nearly 2.25 million licences had been sold, increasing to 8 million by 1938. And King George V embraced the new medium very, very quickly in 1924, making a speech at Wembley on the radio. The transmitter on Borough Hill, transmitter 5XX, which was put there when Reith launched the long-wave radio station, he quoted a little poem, "Daventry Calling, dark and still, the tree of memories stands like a sentry over the graves on the silent hill." The transmitter, set up in 1925, went on in 1932 to be broadcasting the BBC Empire service, and then the third programme. It was broadcasting the World Service, aiming at Europe until 1978. This transmitter made it possible for everyone in the UK to access the new radio, because Daventry was seen to be practically at the centre of the UK. The beginnings of British radar belong in the hands of Arnold Wilkins in Daventry. I'm going to take you down Sheaf Street, one of the prettier streets in the town. Arnold Wilkins, in 1935, took his idea that radio could be used to detect aircraft to Watson Watt, and he in turn took it to Dowding, and who set up an experiment near Borough Hill in Weedon, about 6 miles away from Daventry, to prove that radar could detect incoming aircraft. And of course this was vital to the defence of the UK. And of course many things change as we move from the 19th century into the 21st century. And these splendid pink buildings. To go back to the setting up of the BBC, we need to look at Peter Pendleton Eckersley, a very colourful character and cousin to Aldous Huxley, and he was involved in the early broadcasts with Marconi from the BBC in the Strand in 1922. And he went on to become the first chief engineer. He fell foul of Lord Reith, who had a slightly puritanical approach to Eckersley's affair with the wife of the then BBC music advisor. And Eckersley made a speedy exit. But he was involved in the use of radio transmission by MI6. And indeed, his wife, bizarrely, went off to Nazi Germany as a fervent Nazi and was broadcasting for the Germans. And here we've got the remains of the Dun Cow. It isn't an inn anymore, but it was one of many inns in Daventry, and one of which, the Wheatsheaf, was where King Charles I rested before the Battle of Naseby, which of course he lost. He then went off to Borough Hill and did some hunting because he was a king. Indeed, if you want to explore the sites of the Civil War, Daventry is as good a place to start as any. And when you go, for example, to Naseby, you get an idea of just how big that battle must have been. So here at the end of Sheaf Street, we pass this rather imposing building, which I understand was a sort of office for the BBC. Now, let's look again at the radar, the development of radar in 1935. Within 5 years, that discovery was instrumental in the defence of Britain against the Nazi invasion, and of course was very helpful to the aircraft pilots in the Battle of Britain.